Okay, we are ready to go, and so I want to hand this off to Warren Solowchek from NPD to kick us off here.
Thanks, Mike. I am going to talk about the status of restaurants. So as you're looking at the landscape chart, I'm going to be addressing the first two lines. I'll preface my comments by saying that in the second half of 2016, the industry lost whatever momentum it had gained coming into the year, so that by the end of 2016, we saw some real declines, substantial declines in visits and same-store sales for full-service restaurants. Within limited service, which is traditional fast food places as well as fast casual restaurants, we also saw some weakness. So let me very briefly just address both of those issues. Number one is for limited service restaurants, what we saw happening late in 2016 and into 2017, there was a good amount of promotion going on in order to try and maintain traffic that had built up a little bit in the first part of the year. We saw particularly aggressive promotions among the burger players and the sandwich players. That helped to maintain traffic, but the average check increase coming out of that particular segment of the industry actually declined in the second half of the year. For full-service restaurants, we have seen really 5 years of ongoing weakness in traffic. And really, if you go back to the recession, we have not seen much growth at all for full-service restaurant traffic. Whatever dealing was going on within full service was not particularly effective, and therefore what we saw was an overall decline in same-store sales, and that's coming not only from NPD, but just about any other source that's out there that's keeping track of full-service restaurants and tracking in that particular group of outlets is showing same. Our expectation for the remainder for all of 2017 is that full-service restaurants will continue to be weak. There's nothing that we have identified. There's nothing that's happening, at least in the current environment, that we see that will help to bring people back into full-service restaurants. They're having a really difficult time competing with quick service, though we are seeing more of them try to get into digital and online ordering, still a rather small percentage. For limited service restaurants, quick service restaurants, we're seeing two things happen. We're seeing a little bit of movement and more movement into loyalty programs, which hopefully will increase frequency. We are seeing a little bit of premiumization, I don't know if that's really a word, which will hopefully increase check. And so those two things we expect to lead to some limited growth within limited service restaurants. The other thing that's happening, and one of the growth drivers within limited service for several years has been fast casual restaurants. And the growth rate for fast casual restaurants has really slowed. I think we're in a period now of consolidation within fast casual restaurants, and I do believe that it's going to take some time for that whole segment to shake out. So net, we think that, projected growth is going to be pretty limited for the restaurant industry as a whole going into and throughout 2017. I'll hand it back to you, Mike.
Thank you, Warren. Also, we are receiving a couple of questions on the chat here. If you do have any questions, please send them along. We'll answer those at the end. Brian, want to hand it over to Brian Duck from Data Central.
Thank you, Mike. What I'd like to do is cover off on the second section of the landscape, retail food, which encompasses supermarkets, convenience stores, and what we call other retail, which would include things like department stores, mass merchandisers like Target, as well as the club stores, Sam's, Costco, etc., the food courts in those areas. So the top line, as we look at retail food, we anticipate the retail numbers to be in line with what we were estimating last year with the August release, that in comparison to the industry as a whole and restaurants, we anticipate the retail sector to perform above average and have a fairly stable year ahead for 2017. We don't really anticipate any, or we don't really see any indicators that would cause any major shifts outside of the economic indicators. Look stable as far as employment numbers look good. Consumer confidence numbers have been pretty solid. The one thing facing obviously the food industry, not just retail but restaurants as well, is if we have any cases of extreme weather where there may be a shortage or supply for particular items. But performance-wise, we anticipate the retail segment to perform above average. We do see some increased competition within the store, especially the supermarket area, not so much C-stores, but the supermarket area, since for the last year or so we've been experiencing food deflation, which can make a more compelling argument since food ingredients have been lower priced and prices have been dropping for certain ingredients. It can make a more compelling argument to prepare a meal at home rather than purchase a prepared meal if one so chooses. This deflation and lower food ingredient prices has actually helped grocery stores, and they've been able to keep prices lower due to this deflation, and that's worked in their favor when competing for foot traffic with restaurants. We're seeing shopping patterns evolve, especially with millennials, and we're seeing more of this, what we're calling mixing and matching, where a shopper may go to the prepared foods department and they may buy shredded pork there. They may go to another department and grab tortillas, and then they may go to the produce area and either buy fresh vegetables to chop or buy a value-added bag of chopped vegetables, and then go home and make their shredded pork tacos, for example. So we have seen kind of this mixing and matching, and millennial demographic is much more prone to shop this way and kind of mix and match. And we see that in a bigger scope that includes getting items from restaurants, getting items from supermarkets, getting items from club stores, and more of this mix and match shopping behavior. But bottom line is we do see supermarkets and C-stores continue to use prepared foods as a point of differentiation. Both within the C-store segment and the supermarket segment, we have seen chains that have either acknowledged continued effort to redevelop, redesign, remodel, and upgrade their perimeters, or chains have come in and said that they're going to make a more concerted effort in the prepared foods area. And we've seen this with C-stores as well. Many new unit openings have a much larger emphasis on prepared foods, and we're seeing a lot of prepared foods and beverage activity within the C-store area. We're still in a wait-and-see mode to see how much competition the rise in online grocery ordering and online delivery sources, as well as internet retailers like Amazon doing delivery. The anticipation is that that's going to shrink sales in the middle of the store, but not really affect the perimeter very much. We're still kind of in a wait-and-see mode to see how much competition truly materializes there. And so the only kind of weak spot within the retail segment, department stores have certainly struggled within the last year. Mass merchandisers like Sears and Kmart are closing stores. Target had a very, very rough year, so we are seeing some of those other retail hosts struggling. Walmart did have good fourth quarter numbers. They seem to be doing well, and the club stores seem to be doing well, and they are also emphasizing more activity within their food court area. So that's it for the retail sector. I'll turn it back to Mike.
And Jackie Rodriguez from Data Central, why don't you talk about the bottom half of the landscape?
I sure will, and of course that includes all of our on-site food service categories. Overall, we're expecting strong growth, nominal growth at about 1.5%, but as usual within this segment, a lot of different conditions within each of the categories, and we'll go through those very briefly in turn. First up is education, which actually is one of our weaker segments, overall sort of average growth, not weak per se, but certainly not as strong as the overall number of 1.5 would suggest. And there are a number of reasons for that. Within K through 12, schools have really been having some mixed results in managing the new restrictions from the Healthy Hunger Free Kids Act, which of course began to be implemented a couple of years ago. Some schools are really thriving with these new nutrition requirements and able to implement them with very good reception from their student bodies and individual schools. But a lot of the other ones are struggling. And of course, it's become a fairly political issue with those nutrition requirements. What we've seen in the past year is a few schools who are actually dropping out of the national school meal programs. And what happens then is they, of course, lose that federal funding, but on the other hand, they are seeing that the returns with a more appealing food, maybe higher margin foods that they're able to offer, that's offsetting the reduction in that funding. A couple of items or possible trends to look at within that K through 12 segment that might influence the growth is, number one, the possible emergence of GPOs, or group purchasing organizations, which of course have already had a presence a little bit more prominent within healthcare. But we're seeing groups like the Urban Food Alliance, which has New York, Chicago, Dallas, Los Angeles school districts all participating, trying to leverage better prices on their volume purchases. Last year, about $600 million in purchases through the Urban Food Alliance. Another possible trend that we were seeing is the partnering with local producers and trying to really implement food and nutrition as part of the overall curriculum. For example, in California, we see California Thursdays as a program that has a lot of big school districts, 71 districts overall with about 3,000 schools. They are required, or by participating in this program, they offer only California-sourced products, including proteins, on Thursdays. And they've got a lot of support with menu planning and recipes for that. So those are some of the areas that we think are worth watching in K through 12. College and university, slightly better. Projected growth a little bit under 1%. Similar to what we're seeing in business and industry, which we'll talk about in a moment, food service is really being used in the college and university setting as a draw. They really are becoming quite more competitive, and they're looking at food service as a way to draw in higher enrollment numbers. As a result, the number of operators that we talk to who prioritize the food service on campus are really tailoring their offerings to reflect a more diverse student body and to be more inclusive of a lot of dietary restrictions and religious dietary restrictions, and as well as allergies. And they're increasingly trying to mimic food service with different stations, including build your own and customizable options. On the other hand, almost in contrast to that upscaling, we also see an emerging issue or contrasting issue of food insecurity on a lot of college campuses. There have been some media coverage of students using food pantries, trying to getting federal assistance, use of food stamps within that student body. So we're seeing schools trying to really balance the needs of those two student bodies. And of course, also looking to things like catering services for sporting events or conferences during the school year to help drive revenue. So we see that continuing. In business and industry, similar to college and university, we see, of course, the strong economy impacting business and industry as the economy remains stable and job growth has become very positive. We expect that to continue. Primarily, food service in the workplace, again, is being used as a recruiting tool with a lot of companies trying to lure new hires in a more competitive job market with attractive food service options. And workers are responding. A lot of the surveys in the past year indicate that the vast majority of workers really do have an eye on what the food offerings are in a new job. Another trend that we see in business and industry is possibly a shift away from suburban or small town office parks where you sort of have a captive audience to more urban settings. A lot of large corporations want to move their corporate headquarters downtown, and of course what that means is increased competition in those urban markets for a lot of the food service dollars with restaurants. Within the healthcare segment, of course that includes not only hospitals but also long-term care or rehab as well as senior living. A little bit of a mixed bag. We'll maintain our projection of 2.1% for healthcare overall at the moment. Of course, things are a little bit in flux with all of the potential changes to the Affordable Health Care Act or any other amendments or changes to the healthcare situation at the federal level. But in terms of food service itself and preparation, what we do see is a continued shift toward healthier, more diverse, sustainable ingredients. Healthcare facilities realize that consumers are considering the food service options when they have a choice in the care that they're looking for, and they definitely want to cater to that. But then they've also got the visitor and staff community as well, who also again, have competitive options within healthcare. They can go off-site. So they're trying to balance those two very different user groups and diners. Another trend to watch within healthcare is the rise in what are called accountable care organizations. These were part of the ACA initially, or Obamacare. Started to see them a couple of years ago. They are fully healthcare systems that are fully responsible for all the insurance and all of the health services for their patients, similar to an HMO, but not nearly as strict or restrictive in terms of patient choice. What they are seeing, because there's such an incentive to improve outcomes, is an increased focus on nutrition and tying nutrition and food service to better healthcare outcomes. And so we're going to probably with these accountable care organizations, or ACOs, you might be hearing a lot more of them and how they're focusing a lot more on not only food service but also nutrition as a whole within the food service or in the healthcare environment. And within leisure, moving through to recreation, lodging, and transportation. Overall, as the economy goes, so does this segment. We're projecting a strong forecast of about 2.6% growth, maintaining that forecast at the signs of overall health of the economy and consumer confidence. Lately, we have, of course, a little uncertainty with some of the travel ban and international tourism, but with the economy going strong, we expect that consumers, especially this summer, during the start of vacation season, will be freely spending in recreation and lodging and to a lesser extent, air travel. While the economic figures, especially consumer confidence, indicate positivity about the health of the leisure segment, there are some sort of indicators on the horizon that we definitely want to watch that would impact that growth. One of those, of course, is the potential rise in interest rates that's expected. So there is some uncertainty, not quite to the extent of the healthcare segment, but certainly enough to monitor closely. And then just real quick, we'll wrap up with the all other segment. Again, as the other ones, very mixed, with strong performance in vending and particularly catering, seen as growth opportunities. Again, those tied to overall economic health and consumer spending, but in military and corrections, not nearly as positive, actually negative growth we're projecting right there, both very weak segments.
Great. Thank you, Jackie. We have received a couple of questions, and so we have time just to answer a few. The first question was with regard to the convenience store segment, and the question is, does the sale number of $11.1 billion include beverage, or is this number just food only?
Food and non-alcoholic beverage.
Yes. So on the bottom of our, and it's tough to see on this, but we'll direct you to where you can find this full food service landscape on the IFMA website. For all of these segments, it does include food and non-alcoholic beverage. Another question that came in, is there a different outlook for independent full-service restaurants versus chains? They've shown growth in the past. Curious if that's slowing, or should we expect continued strength with independents?
I would say that there might be a little bit stronger performance among independents, only in that consumers are looking for something different and something unique as they're seeking out full-service restaurants, and you tend to be able to get something different and unique out of an independent much more easily than you would a chain restaurant, which tends to have a more generalized national sort of menu. So I would say independents, in fact, may end up doing a little bit better than chains. Right now, chains are really struggling much more than they have in the past.
Right. We have time for one more question here. Can somebody speak to the impact of food halls and the impact that maybe is expected on this format, which seems to be taking over many of big cities?
I could give it a go from the CREST point of view, or for the NPD point of view. I think that they are growing. I think there are two things that you need to keep in mind about food halls. So I'm in Chicago, and in fact, my office is right across the street from a food hall. In Chicago, to my knowledge, or at least down in the Loop, there is a single food hall. We also have an Eataly here, which I guess would be a food hall if you think of it that way. But they're small in number. They're growing fairly rapidly. I think that they will have a presence in large urban areas, not necessarily in suburban or rural areas. And I think that's going to limit the overall number of units that will be there. I do think, though, that they are, on the one hand, a direct challenge to existing restaurants, particularly those which are geographically close. On the other hand, most of the stalls or booths or counters that open up in these halls are outposts for existing restaurant chains. So it's a great way for them to get in front of more people. So I think they will continue to grow over time. I think it's a great concept because it gives people so much choice as they're seeking out what to do. I also believe that it's much more of a lunch destination than any other day part, so it will have a bigger effect there than it will in any other day part.
Thank you, Warren, and thank you all for participating in this webinar. I mentioned before that this has been recorded and will be posted on our website within the next week. To download this food service landscape, it is on the IFMA website. If you go to www.ifmaworld.com and go to resources at the top and industry research, you can find this food service landscape available for download there. So again, if you go to resources at the top, industry research, there will be a button to download the food service landscape. Just a couple of last notes here, some upcoming IFMA events want to make sure everybody's aware of. Next Tuesday, March 21st, here in Rosemont, right by Chicago O'Hare, we will be hosting a chain operator joint business planning training. It's a fantastic way for manufacturers to learn about best practices in working with their chain operator customers. We will also be joined by Jeff Amescato, who's the Vice President of Supply Chain and Menu Innovation at Shake Shack. We are offering a buy one, get one registration. If you have any questions, please let myself, Mike, or Becky at ifmaworld.com know about that, and we can make sure to set you up. Additionally, this landscape will be updated at Marketing and Sales Leaders Forum August 8th to 9th at Tyson's offices in Chicago. So mark your calendars for that. We've got a great agenda that will be published here in the next couple of weeks, and we look forward to seeing you all there. Thank you all very much for the time, and look forward to seeing you at a future IFMA event. Take care.